What were the most expensive American cars during the 1980s? Today we might think of the all-new Lincoln Navigator or even the Cadillac Escalade V-Series, but it's time to take a look into the past. A lot of you guys find some of these videos nostalgic, which makes me very happy. I enjoy that part of making these videos. I wasn't around during this time, but being able to learn about these cars has definitely continued my passion for doing this. The 1980s were a weird time. Greed was good, hair was big, and the cars, well, they were trying to find their identity. We were coming out of the malaise era, trying to figure out fuel injection and slapping digital dashes on everything. But if you had money, I mean real money, you didn't just want a car, you wanted a statement. We're talking about land yachts, designer labels, and tech that was way ahead of its time, and usually broke. In this week's video, I will be going from the affordable elite to the absolute bank breakers. I can only briefly talk about each car, which sucks, because some of these have so much more to offer. Also, I would like to clarify that some prices might be a little off, as we know there are tons of add-on features that can definitely jack up the price. I did extensive research to find out the most accurate prices for each car. With that said, grab your car phone and put on your best suit. Here are the top 10 elite American cars of the 1980s that broke the bank. Let's start with a car that screams identity crisis, the 1980 Lincoln Versailles. Few cars are designed with such uniqueness as the Versailles. Designed and engineered with beautiful new styling, this was like getting a 2020 base Lincoln Continental or a 2016 MKS. That is the best way to compare it to the present time. This car just makes the cutoff, as it was produced from 1977 until 1980. Until its last year, it was about $2,000 less than the Cadillac Seville at the time, which was its direct competition. Now, the Versailles was Ford's response to the increasing demand for fuel-efficient luxury cars, which is fine. However, these cars get a bad rap. After reading many different forums, I now understand why. Here's the twist. The Versailles is essentially an upscale Ford Granada that borrowed a Continental grille, a fake spare tire hump on the trunk, and some leather thrown around inside. It's truly unfortunate for the consumers because looking back, they were being ripped off. Maybe I'm being a little too harsh. I don't know. So what did you get when you bought a Versailles in 1980? Well, first off, you got the first base coat clear coat process in America. It was shiny. There were 36 possible color options, and it had all the bells and whistles for the time. Under the hood, you were looking at a choked-out 302 V8 making about 130 horsepower. Not exactly a rocket ship. By 1980, the recession was in full swing, but also there was a new Continental coming, so the Versailles cut production that very year with less than 5,000 sold. It wasn't the most expensive car on this list, but for what was basically a fancy taxicab, it cost a fortune. Moving up the ladder, we have a car endorsed by the chairman of the board himself, the Chrysler Imperial Frank Sinatra edition. The Imperial was Chrysler's most expensive car at the time. It was newer, more exclusive, and more advanced than the competition. Or at least that's what Lee Iacocca wanted you to believe. I made a video about the worst 80s cars from Chrysler a couple of weeks ago, and the Imperial was featured. Not because of its looks. I think it's a very elegant looking car, but rather its absolute god-awful electronic fuel injection system. But let's look at the Frank Sinatra edition, or the FS. Sinatra and Iacocca were great friends at the time. He actually played at his retirement party. He agreed to promote the car for a fee of $1 a year. This package was around $1,000 extra on top of an already pricey car, pushing the sticker over $20,000. And today's money, that's pushing $65,000. So what did you get when you bought an Imperial in 1980? Well, first off, you got the first base coat clear coat process in America. It was shiny. There were 36 possible color options, and it had all the bells and whistles for the time. Under the hood, you were looking at a choked-out 302 V8 making about 130 horsepower. Not exactly a rocket ship. In fact, one person said that it felt like it took 2 minutes to go from 0 to 60 miles an hour. Is $3,500 worth it for some cassettes and blue paint? 427 people thought so. That is it. Just over 400 were made. The Imperial FS was cut a year short before the Imperial ended production in '83. I guess Chrysler didn't think it was worth it either.
But you have to admit, driving around in a light blue land yacht listening to New York, New York, that's a vibe. If Sinatra wasn't your style, maybe you preferred high fashion. Enter the Lincoln Continental Mark VI Bill Blass edition. The Mark VI was the full-size luxury flagship from Ford at that time. It was even slotted above the town car. During the early 80s, Lincoln went all in on the designer series. This included Cartier, Pucci, Givenchy, and Bill Blass. I hope I'm pronouncing everything correctly. If not, I'm sure a few of you will let me know in the comments. Among the four, the Bill Blass was the most expensive by a few $100s, and this package was typically associated with a very nautical look. This trim is most notable for having a dark blue metallic paint with white upper accents, or sometimes a cream and navy combo. It looked like a deck shoe on wheels. The interior? Midnight blue with white leather accents. It came with lacy spoke cast aluminum wheels, a personalized instrument panel nameplate, and twin comfort lounge seats. Just every option imaginable. And of course, the Bill Blass anchor logo was present on the side panels or the opera windows to let everyone know that you paid this much money for this edition. It wasn't fast. It had that same sluggish V8 as the Versailles, but it floated down the road. These are very rare cars to come across today, as they were hardly ever brought due to the insane price tag. But at the end of the day, I still think they're pretty cool. Now we have to talk about the most controversial design of the decade, the Cadillac Seville Elegante, also known as the Bustleback. Following up on the Lincoln, we have this oddball when it comes to styling. The Seville debuted in '75 as a regular boxy sedan, but 5 years later, GM redesigned it, and man, is it spicy. I'm referring to the trunk. The front looks completely fine, long hood, chrome grille, but the back looks like someone chopped it off with a guillotine. It was designed to look like a 1930s Rolls-Royce, a car for those who choose to go first class all the way. The Seville now shared its platform with the Eldorado and was front-wheel drive, and here is where it gets expensive and tragic. Introducing Seville for the 80s, first American car with a diesel as standard. We all know how that turned out. 0 to 60 for this car with the diesel was 19.7 seconds. That is actually insane. You could read a book before you hit highway speeds. On top of that, Cadillac offered the V8 6.4 engine, which tried to shut off cylinders to save gas and usually just broke down. But let's talk money. The Elegante package. This was the top-notch trim with a price premium of nearly $4,000. It featured a two-tone paint job, usually brown and cream, real wire wheels, and perforated leather seats. In 1981, this car cost over $23,000. That was massive money. And you would never think this, but the demand for this body style amongst collectors has more than doubled in the last 5 years. People are finally starting to appreciate the weirdness. If the Seville was too weird for you, you went for the king of personal luxury. The Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz convertible. The longest-running American personal luxury car, these 10th-gen Eldorados were right smack in the middle in terms of size. While downsized, these Eldorados were still decent-sized cars with good room and decent power, apart from those diesels I mentioned. But only for 1984 and 1985 did Cadillac offer the Biarritz Convertible Edition. This was the highest-priced GM production car at the time, even more than the Corvette. The entry price for a base Eldorado was around $20,000. Combining the Biarritz package, which gave you that stainless steel roof panel and pillow-top seats, added an extra $12,000. Back in 1984, American Sunroof Company, or ASC, helped with this conversion. GM has worked with them many times before, so it only seemed right to pair up again. Imagine this. You're driving a car that cost over $32,000 in 1985. In today's money, that is pushing $90,000. It featured digital instrumentation, a somewhat new innovation for the time, and the HT4100 engine. Now, enthusiasts know that engine was fragile. It was an aluminum block with iron heads. It liked to warp. but when it was running, you looked like $1,000,000. Now let's take a break from the soft luxury and look at some expensive muscle. Probably one of the coolest cars on this list, the 1987 Buick GNX. This was the hottest American-built performance car you could buy at the time. Faster 0 to 60 than Ferraris and Lamborghinis, which was 4.7 seconds. Under the hood was a 3.8 turbo V6. GM rated it at 276 horsepower and 360 pound-feet of torque. But that was a lie. Independent testing revealed that this turbo V6, made in the 80s mind you, made closer to 300 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. I don't know a single person who doesn't love this car. It was the Darth Vader car. Just 547 GNXs were ever built. They took the regular Grand National, sent it to ASC McLaren, and gave it a better turbo, better suspension, and those iconic fender vents. The price? $29,900. For a Buick, a regular Regal cost about $11,000, so you were paying nearly triple. But the investment was worth it. There was this practically new GNX that popped up a year or two ago with just 9 miles on the clock. It was that cliché barn find. Anyway, the owner passed away, some other guy got his hands on it, I'm not really sure how, but the dude wants, and this is crazy, he wants $350,000 for it. How do you feel about this? Is he asking too much or is it a fair price? If the Buick wasn't fast enough and you had even more money to burn, you walked into a Chevy dealer and ticked option code B2K.
The Corvette C4 ran from '84 to '96, and for the most part, it was affordable performance. But in 1987, Chevy did something wild. They let a company called Callaway Engineering modify the cars, but you could order it straight from the factory. This is the Callaway twin-turbo Corvette. Here's the math. A base Corvette in 1987 was about $28,000. The Callaway option package cost an additional $19,995. You were basically buying a whole other car just for the engine upgrade. The total price was hovering around $50,000 in 1987. For that, you got 382 horsepower and 562 pound-feet of torque. It would do 178 miles per hour. This was supercar territory. It wasn't just the bolt-on kit. Callaway reworked the engine entirely. But it was expensive and it was temperamental. Later on, they even made a sledgehammer version that hit 254 miles per hour. I've never really been a fanboy for the C4 Corvette. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate them. But the Callaway is the exception. It's a piece of engineering history that cost as much as a house. We can't talk about elite 80s cars without mentioning the most famous movie star of them all, the DMC DeLorean. Man, these were so expensive for what they were. The original plan was to sell this car for $12,000. By the time it actually hit the market in 1981, the sticker price was $25,000, and dealers were marking them up to $30,000 because of the hype. For what you paid, you got like no performance or power. They were only good for 130 horsepower on a good day. Under the hood was that PRV, Peugeot, Renault, Volvo V6 engine. There can be a whole video dedicated to these motors. They were definitely interesting. They had a 90-degree layout for a V6 engine, which isn't all that common. Usually it's 60 degrees. But you weren't paying for speed. You were paying for the Giugiaro design, the brushed stainless steel panels, and those go-wing doors. John DeLorean wanted to build an ethical safety car that lasted forever. Instead, he built an icon that bankrupted the company. Production information was lost upon the shutdown of DMC, but some sources say around 9,000 units were ever built. It looked like a spaceship, cost as much as a Porsche 911, and drove like a family sedan. But frankly, I'd still buy one. If you wanted American luxury but Italian style, Cadillac had a very expensive solution, the Cadillac Eldorado. This was GM's attempt to fight the Mercedes SL, and the production process was absolutely insane. Here's how it worked. GM built the chassis in Detroit. They put them on a modified Boeing 747. They flew them to Italy. Pininfarina, the guys who designed Ferraris, built the bodies and painted them. Then they flew them back to Detroit for final assembly. They called it the Elegante Air Bridge. And boy, did the customer pay for those frequent flyer miles. When it launched in 1987, the price was $54,700. That was astronomically high. And what did you get? A front-wheel drive two-seater with a convertible top that was famously difficult to operate manually. The interior had more buttons than the Space Shuttle. It had a digital dash, Recaro seats, and a telephone. It was actually a decent car, especially the later models with the Northstar V8. But at the time, it was hard to justify paying double the price of a Lincoln for a car that was technically smaller. It remains one of the most ambitious and expensive experiments GM ever tried. Finally, we have the ultimate look-at-me-I'm-rich car of the 1980s, the Excalibur Series 4. Now, some of you might call this a kit car. It is not. The Excalibur was a factory-built neoclassic made in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was designed to look like a 1928 Mercedes SSK, but it was built with modern Chevy running gear. In the 80s, if you were a celebrity, a pro wrestler, or just eccentric, you drove an Excalibur. These things were massive. They had fiberglass bodies, huge chrome grills, external exhaust pipes, and 4 trumpet horns. And the price? In the mid-80s, an Excalibur Series 4 Roadster cost over $60,000. By the end of the decade, the Series 5 was pushing $80,000. That is Rolls-Royce money. Under the hood, it usually had a Corvette 350 V8 or sometimes a big block. It drove like a truck, handled like a boat, but it turned more heads than anything else on the road. It's the definition of 80s excess. Style over substance, chrome over class, and a price tag that would make your accountant weep. And there you have it, the top 10 elite American cars of the 1980s that broke the bank. From the bustleback Seville to the turbocharged GNX, the 80s were a time where if you had the cash, American automakers were more than happy to take it. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it to this point, then props to you. You really like watching my videos, and that means a lot. Anyway, I got some good news. In the next couple of months, there's going to be some drastic improvements. For one, the audio is going to hopefully be a little bit more crisp and clear. And also, I might be learning a new software program to help with my editing and make things look better for you guys to enjoy. At the end of the day, you guys are my audience, and I'm the creator, so you guys come first. That's going to wrap it up. Let me know in the comments, which one of these money pits would you park in your garage? I think I'm taking the GNX. I will see you guys next week.